Hello everyone. Today we will continue to explain the content of the Red Hat System Administrator certification. Next we will discuss the fifth question, which is about configuring scheduled tasks in our system. There are a few points you need to pay attention to regarding scheduled tasks. For a scheduled task, the first thing we need to pay attention to is the user. Regarding the user, in the question, we can see where we need to specify it, which is related to the previous question. You need to specify it for the user. Harry, this question is related to the previous one. The previous question mainly involved creating a user and a group, which is relatively simple. But you must ensure that the username and group are written correctly. Here. Once you, for example, write the username or group name incorrectly, you won't get any points for this question. This question is very simple, but if you make a mistake with even one word or even one letter, you won't get any points for it. So here, everyone must pay more attention to the details. Check it several times, because the user creation will definitely succeed, no matter which username you use, even if you write something like ABC. Such a name will also succeed. So, if you make a mistake here, it won't give you an error. It won't give any error at all. You can only check it yourself. You need to verify whether the created user meets the requirements of the task, so everyone should pay attention to this. We didn't mention this in the previous lesson. Here I want to emphasize the issue of the username, and the same goes for the main name. The main name. This is even more serious. If there's an error with your main name, it's equivalent to all three users failing. So here we need to pay attention to the group name and username. They must be correct. Once you get this question right, you can proceed to the next one, right? Especially with the username, if you make a mistake with the previous user, the next question will also be wrong. It will also be wrong, for example. Suppose you make a mistake with a word here. No, it should be a letter. For example, here we wrote yai as T, if yai is written as T. Here you also didn't notice the issue, and continued using that T to enter the user without any problems, and there were no errors, right? However, after you finish writing this scheduled task, even if the task succeeds, but the problem is wrong, so the result is wrong. So each question is like this. The questions themselves are actually not particularly difficult. The questions for our entire basic certification are actually very simple. Yes, they are all very simple. Basically, for most simple questions, it's just 1 or 2 commands. And for slightly more complex ones, within 5, at most 10 commands, this question can definitely be solved. Yes, we have a total of just over 20 questions. Once you practice and become proficient, let's say a standard time would be half an hour. Basically, after practicing, all students can finish in half an hour, but not many can get a perfect score. Why do I say this? It's because it's very simple, right? Everyone tends to underestimate this question and think, oh, such a simple question, right? I can just type it out casually and be done with it. Indeed, there are no errors, right? But there are some parameter issues in the details. First, make sure you don't make typing errors, and secondly, in our question bank. This type of question is generally the same as in the exam, but if the parameters change and you don't notice it. At this point, being too proficient in typing can actually be a problem. For example, if you can type all the questions very proficiently, like finishing in 20 minutes when you have half an hour. If during the exam you finish typing in 20 minutes, only to find out later that several questions had their parameters changed and are incorrect. For example, the simplest thing. Where can the parameters of this question be changed? It's the time, right? Or the output content. These are the 2 places that can be changed, especially the time part. If you write it wrong here, you won't get any points either. So overall, this beginner level exam is relatively simple. Each question is basically just a few commands. But if you make a mistake, it's easy to get no points at all for a question. Why? Because you might completely fail to meet the requirements of the question. Compared to the more advanced exams, this means the risk is somewhat higher. In the intermediate exam, each question has many requirements. If you complete part of it, you'll get partial credit, but for the beginner exam, the requirements are already minimal. If you make a mistake, you might fail to meet all the requirements of the entire question, resulting in no points for that question. It could be just 1 command, and if it's wrong, you might lose 10 or 20 points. This is possible. So, from this perspective. In terms of the results for most candidates, the pass rate for RACE is generally higher than for RACs. This is no joke. It's true. The pass rate for race is indeed higher than for recs. The pass rate for the intermediate level is actually higher than for the beginner level. You should know that for the intermediate level, no matter how proficient you are, it takes at least an hour to complete all the content, at least about an hour. But for the beginner level, if you are somewhat proficient, you can finish it in half an hour. With more practice, you can actually manage it in about 20 minutes. In terms of content, actually, our intermediate level has much more content than the beginner level. But then, why is the pass rate higher? The intermediate level has a higher pass rate because it's actually a matter of details. It's not that. Oh, where is this? Oh, if you remember a technical point incorrectly, or there's a command you don't know, these aren't the main issues. Instead, it's these details that can be problematic. If you don't pay attention to them, the beginner level might not be as easy to pass as the intermediate level, because there are especially many commands in the intermediate level. Moreover, after executing the commands at the intermediate level, the verification is relatively easier compared to the beginner level. For each intermediate level, what are we mainly testing? I can give you a heads up here, right? At the intermediate level, we mainly test an Ansible automation script. We mainly test the playbook scripts. After writing and running each script, it will tell you whether it is correct. This is actually a very good way to check where the errors are, right? You can make corrections. In the end, most students are able to pass smoothly. Even, how should I put it, there are significantly more students achieving full marks in the intermediate exam compared to the beginner level. In the intermediate level, you can achieve full marks by typing for an hour. However, in the beginner level, even if you type for 20 to 30 minutes, you might not pass. The reason actually lies in the details, not the difficulty. In terms of difficulty, the intermediate level is actually harder, with more content. However, in terms of details, the beginner level requires more attention to various points. For the beginner level, especially with RedHat, regarding these two exams, the changes in the questions for the intermediate level are minimal. Although it is difficult. Precisely because it is difficult, they generally won't give you too many changes. If you understand all the key points and are aware of all the solutions, it is actually quite easy to pass. However, for the beginner level, because it is inherently simple, the way to increase the difficulty is actually to adapt the questions flexibly, especially regarding the parameters. So everyone must pay attention here. In this question, the focus is mainly on commands and time. Regarding commands and time, the first thing everyone needs to pay attention to is regarding the command here, we actually need to use just one command, but it's not meant to be executed directly in the command line. What we need is a scheduled task. This question is about a scheduled task, not about executing it in the command line. Everyone should pay attention to this. In the previous questions, we mostly entered commands in the command line. And once the time was successful, we verified it, and there were no issues. However, for this question, it's relatively difficult to verify, or you might even say it's impossible to verify. As for the fifth question, it's actually a question that cannot be verified. So this single, everyone needs to be more careful. The reason we emphasize a lot on the details in question 5 is because it is a relatively typical case where we cannot check. For some of the previous questions, we can actually check them. We can go back and use some commands to verify whether our answers are correct, right? For example, in a previous question, once you have configured the sample repository correctly, if you can install a software, then it is definitely successful, 100% successful. As long as you can install it. This question is 100% full marks. But for this question, it cannot be verified. Why is that? Firstly, because we are dealing with a scheduled task. Generally, a scheduled task requires us to execute a command at a specific time. So here's the problem. The exam is in the morning. And then you see the scheduled task required in this question is in the afternoon. You can't wait until the afternoon to verify it, right? There's no time, as the intermediate exam is in the afternoon. In the morning, we take the RHCSA beginner exam, and in the afternoon, the intermediate RHCE exam. The morning session is generally 3 hours, and the afternoon session is 4 hours. This is the basic situation of the exam. We won't dedicate a separate lesson to discuss the exam details. Instead, we'll intersperse this information throughout each question to introduce it to everyone. The point to note here is that you can't verify it. The only thing you can do is to be extremely careful and make sure you do it correctly. That's the first point. The second point is pay attention to the user. You must pay attention to the user. This time, emphasizing the user is not about the user's name, but rather in actual scheduled tasks. We can set up scheduled tasks without specifying a user, but by default, it is set to the administrator. Because when we log into our node, we use the administrator login. Since we use the administrator login, it means that we actually have administrator privileges to manage any user, including your own scheduled tasks. So if you forget to specify a user when writing this scheduled task, it essentially means you have set a scheduled task for the administrator, which is ineffective and scores 0. This question also scores 0. So what do we need to pay attention to here? Well, we need to pay attention to, first of all, what we need to use. The command for scheduled tasks. Normally, if we add it afterwards, we can directly edit it, and it can be edited like this. For example, we press enter. Right. It has already entered the editing mode, but that's not correct, because the default editing here is for our administrator. Yes, it's the administrator. But that's not the key point here. The key is still the user within our system. Let's switch to node 01 first, shall we? As for switching, let's take a look at the command we used to switch before, because here we need to use the IP to switch. Let me check the command above. Okay, yes, this is the IP we used before, and with this we can switch to the administrator. The connection failed, but the IP is fine, right? The IP is fine, so what is the reason for the connection failure? We can take a look. We can open this. Our command line. What is the most likely reason for the switch failure here? Most likely it's an issue with the virtual machine, because after our last class, we shut down the entire virtual machine. After shutting it down, it is. After I restarted it, we can see here that only one of them is turned on. The other one is not on, and in this situation, it's the same. However, you won't encounter this during the exam, so just pay attention to it during your regular practice. There's nothing much else to it. Here, we'll start it up again as a whole, and you can see it's lit up again. Once server A lights up, we can connect remotely. This is not a big issue. It's in the practice environment. During the exam, if we encounter any issues, it's okay. All virtual machines should be running normally. If you encounter a problem with any virtual machine, you can contact the examiner and ask how to resolve it specifically. Generally, if it completely freezes, which is rare, you can restore the snapshot of that virtual machine. Okay, everything is up and running here. Once it's up, shall we connect? Let's go back now. In the command line, of course, you can connect here as well, but I usually prefer to use. Typing here is actually a bit more convenient. Let's use this command to connect again. Let's take a look at the IP, the one we worked on last class. Let's check the question. The question from last class should be fine. Let's mainly take a look at the first question. Right, the IP is here. This IP should be the same as the one we just had. The IP is the same. It might be that it just started and the virtual machine hasn't connected yet. Let's try connecting again here. If it's still not correct, we can try checking the previous host name to see if it works. Or we can also check inside the virtual machine we just mentioned. If you can't connect, what does that indicate? It indicates that the virtual machine hasn't started yet. In this case, we need to wait a bit, so when you're doing this yourself, we can double-click to open the virtual machine and check the effect. It hasn't opened yet. Here. Let's take another look. Let's exit this first, then reopen it. It might be that there are too many virtual machines running, which could cause the software to lag a bit. Executing the I command. Hear this. It's a bit laggy, so let's try remote connection here. Server A. We can't connect here. Let's take a look. Besides this main mirror, the other main screen is actually Node 1, right? Node 1 is the theme name we changed in the first question earlier. Here it might be that the virtual machine is experiencing some lag. If you have many open at the same time, it's because my personal computer is actually different from the actual exam environment. In the actual exam environment, what do we actually need? In the actual exam environment, it is actually a physical machine with a virtual machine installed inside, so relatively speaking, it doesn't consume as many resources, not as much. But here, if we are installing a virtual machine within another virtual machine, it inherently consumes more resources, which is normal. Alright, here we will enter the console again to take a look. Entering the console here is actually a bit slow. The speed will be slightly slower. If you encounter this situation, what can everyone do? So when everyone is doing it later, how can you proceed? Try not to shut down the virtual machine. In my case, after finishing the last class, I shut down the virtual machine. Now, I have restarted it. Here, what is the best operation to perform? After you finish a part of the tasks, if you haven't completed everything this time, and there's no complete set of tasks done, you can take a snapshot of the virtual machine. Take a snapshot. And after taking the snapshot, what can we do here? Well, the next time you work on it, you can directly restore to this snapshot. And it's best if this snapshot is a boot snapshot. This way, you can directly restore to that state. If it's a shutdown snapshot, what happens if I take a shutdown snapshot? It might cause some virtual machines to be unable to start. This situation can occur. It is possible for this to happen. So, in this case, what we have here is actually currently in a state of not being up, right? Not being up. So let's try connecting again here to see the effect. If it still can't connect, what can we do? We can restore the snapshot and then reinitialize the environment. It's connected now. This is actually the virtual machine starting up, which can be a bit slow, but it's not a big issue. Next time you can take a snapshot when it's about to start up, so it will boot faster. If you take a shutdown snapshot, it will naturally consume less, but has it started? Now let's connect. First, you need to ensure something. Make sure your service is running. Let's check the service status first. Active. This status is normal. Next, what else do we need to do? We need to set it to start automatically on boot. This is very important, very important. If you don't do this, well, this task. It's the same, as long as it's a service, you must set it to start automatically on boot. Of course, if it doesn't show the effect of starting automatically, it means it has already been done. So it's fine. Next, let's edit our policy. Please pay attention here. There is an issue with this policy. Earlier, we only added one option, but adding a second option means specifying what? Specifying a user, specifying this user, because we are currently administrators. The administrator specifies a user, which is equivalent to creating one for this user. Let's go directly in and take a look at the effect. After coming in, the first requirement is daily. This specific time point. We come to the fifth question. Its requirement is this daily time. So what we need here is, first, write this time. This time is written in reverse order. For daily, all should use asterisks. All should use asterisks. That's it. This means daily, executing a command at this time point every day. As for the command, it's this one. Here, everyone needs to pay attention. During the exam, first make sure to clearly understand what the command is. Clearly understanding what the command is, that's the first point. The second is the timing issue. These are the 2 points. Furthermore, if by any chance the parameters change significantly, what this specifically means is this is actually considered a relatively simple way to write it. The question is relatively simple. If, let's say, on a certain day, this examiner, well, we can't really call them an examiner, it's more like the official of the red envelope, wants to add a little bit of difficulty to this question. Generally, there's not much difficulty to add after the command. It's just about executing whatever command is given. It's in the earlier part where there might be some changes. So if you notice any changes in the timing, don't panic. First, the order is minute, hour, day, month, week. These are our 5 pieces of information. For this question, as per our current question stem, it only requires us to execute the task at a specific time each day. The last 3 actually are not used, right? The last 3 are actually not used, which makes it very simple. If it encounters changes, where might those changes occur? First, it's in. This is day, this is month, this is week. Generally, day, month, and week conflict with each other, so they cannot be set simultaneously. There are 2 ways to change this. The first is specify what? Specify day and month. For example, a specific day of each month. Or a specific month and day of each year, etc. In this case, you just need to change these 2. Note that this is day, the 3rd position is day, and the 3rd and 4th positions are month. This is one change. Another change is, for example, a specific time each week. And for week, it's the 5th position. The range for weeks is actually a bit different from before, so pay attention. For the first 3 or 4, everyone knows the range, right? Minutes are from 0 to 59, hours are 0 to 23. Days are from 1 to 31, months are from 1 to 12, right? That's common knowledge. For weeks, it's like this. Weeks are from 0 to 6. 0 to 6. 0 is Sunday. 60, Saturday is 1 to 6, which is Monday to Saturday. 0 is Sunday, that's usually how it is. Of course, 7 can also represent Sunday. Both 0 and 7 can actually represent Sunday, but generally, 0 is used, so usually 0 to 6 is sufficient. Pay attention to this, as this is generally where changes might occur. This is the first point. This is a simple change, just adding a time, adding a day or month, or adding a week. If something more difficult appears, of course, the probability of encountering something difficult is not very high, because this is, right, a basic level of seriousness, so there won't be anything particularly difficult, but everyone should. In this area, you can also get a head start on understanding, because the debate topic is unpredictable. The debate topic manager is responsible for all of this, right? All institutions actually learn about the debate topic because it has already changed, right? They only know after it has changed, and they basically won't predict in advance how it will change. Of course, the changes to the debate topic won't be particularly significant, the changes won't be particularly large. So everyone can rest assured it won't be the case that after the debate topic changes, our question bank becomes unusable. This won't happen. The debate topic usually just involves adding or replacing 1 or 2 questions, and it won't affect your overall performance. As long as you get the other questions right, you will definitely pass. There's no need for everyone to worry about this. There's also a method for every minute, like once every 10 minutes or once every hour, you can use the asterisk format. For example, if you encounter, if it's once every minute, that's quite rare. If it's once every 10 minutes, you can write something like new-10, new-10, which can represent the frequency of how often it occurs. And this is related to frequency, and it's quite rare for me, but it's good for everyone to be aware of it. However, in a normal production environment, you might encounter it. So, in this context, many exam questions can actually be applied in real-life situations, apart from what was mentioned before. The antivirus software, that is SE Linux, is basically not used. Other than that, everything else can actually be used in the environment setup. They can all be used. So here we can save, and exit. Just now here. I pressed the wrong key. Let's write it again here. I accidentally copied several copies just now, so now let's rewrite this command. This cannot be verified, huh? What can it only be done through? It can only be done through your own inspection to see if there are any issues with the specific content. If there are no issues, then you can just save it normally. If there are issues, this kind of thing cannot be verified, huh? After saving successfully, you can see here that a message has appeared saying that a new scheduled task has been installed. A new scheduled task has been installed here. First of all, there's a prompt on the line above. Pay attention to this. It's not an error message. So don't worry, it's not an error. Initially this was, because for this user, there were actually no scheduled tasks. In fact, not just for this user, but previously, for our entire system. All users in the entire system actually had no scheduled tasks. Until just recently, even administrators by default didn't have any. And generally, all users basically didn't have any. Usually we had to create them manually. So here, by default, because it's set to default, there are no scheduled tasks, which is why it shows this information. And then here, when we edit scheduled tasks, it's actually editing a temporary file. It's a temporary file. After editing, it shows here that a new scheduled task has been installed. And there's no problem here. Then to check, you can use this command to go back in and verify again. Mainly, you should check the time and the command that follows. It's the same, just like this. How should I put it? Even a single word mistake is not acceptable. Even a single letter mistake is not acceptable because in the file, we cannot use an auto-completion method, right? In the command line, we can actually use auto-completion, like with the previous tasks, right? We can use auto-completion to avoid some of these errors, to avoid potential errors. However, in a plain file, you cannot use type file completion. Especially like the latter part. In the intermediate exam, almost all operations, more than 90%, are typed in the file, or written in the file, and not much is done in the command line. So, it becomes more serious. In the beginner level, it's still okay. In the beginner level, most of the time we can execute in the command line, we can complete and avoid some issues. But here, it's completely unavoidable. What can we do? We can only rely on checking with the naked eye. Not a single mistake is allowed, because first of all, the requirement of this task is to execute this command at a specific time. If there's a mistake in the command, or if any parameter is written incorrectly, then the command won't execute, or if the parameter is wrong, the outcome will be different. These are all issues, including the execution time. The main point of this task is to tell everyone that you must do what? You must also apply this to other tasks. You need to be even more meticulous. If you encounter situations like this where you can't verify through commands, you must ensure your writing is accurate and check carefully. This checking isn't just about glancing over it once. Everyone should be thorough. After completing each task, you should review it once, and if possible, verify it through commands. You can check through commands, and if you can't check through commands, then carefully review some of the things you've done. After finishing each question, you should check it. Once you've checked everything and completed all the questions, go back and check everything again before submitting. This is because the time goes by quickly. Once you're proficient, you can finish everything in half an hour, including checking, and then spend another half an hour reviewing. So you must check several times, as there is plenty of time. The exam lasts 3 hours, and if you finish in half an hour, you have the remaining time, right? You can, of course, leave early, but the prerequisite is to check multiple times and ensure there are no issues before leaving. This is the situation with this question. Let's save it now. Another way to check is that you can use another option to check. In this way, you can see that the effect it shows is actually the same as the previous command. This is the view command. And this is the edit command. This is our. The fifth question. With this question on scheduled tasks, we not only focus on explaining this question, but also emphasize some points to pay attention to when solving problems, including some key points to note during exams. Alright, this is our fifth question. If you need the complete question bank, you can leave a comment below and purchase the question bank at the best price. That's it for today, everyone. Goodbye.